Google Sheets now has AI plugged right into its cells. With this, you can extract, transform, and summarize information at scale without ever leaving your spreadsheet. In this video, I'll show you how to use it, what limitations you have to think about, and also how to engineer prompts that really help you do your work. So let's get started. Let's start with the most basic of use cases. If, for example, I'd wanted to write a blog post on the topic of, let's say, AI usage in the workplace, just like in ChatGPT, I could ask Google Sheets to write me a blog post about that. For this, I would use this new formula called AI. And first, it's asking for a prompt. So I will say, write a blog post on this subject. The second argument would be a range of cells. So here it's just this one cell, A1. I'll close the function bracket, and what would happen, you see it spinning in the top right, it writes me a blog post on that topic. You could use ChatGPT or any other of the AI tools to write the blog post. So this is not particularly an exciting use case. But I want to show you a few more relevant use cases. Let's look at a slightly more exciting example. Here I have a list of countries, and I might want to look up what the capital for each of these countries are. So the first one, the USA, of course, would be Washington, D.C. And I wrote a prompt that does this. If I extend this over all the cells, it will go ahead and one by one will extract the capital for those countries. Now, a few things that are interesting here. One, it will go one by one, so you will see one cell after the other pop up. And here you kind of see a glimpse for what kinds of use cases this AI function really is useful for. It's whenever you have a whole bunch of information that you need to apply the same kind of transformation, lookup, summarization to. So in this case, it's only 13, 14 countries or so, but with one prompt, I was able to map one after the other, which then might be helpful down the road when you work with this type of information. The second thing I want to point out here is there's, of course, some things that the AI does not do particularly well. So for Narnia, I don't know, I haven't read the books, but I don't know, there is a capital. And so here it writes 3 question marks. Same with the information gummy boat. That's, of course, a nonsensical country. You can't extract the capital for that. The way this works, and I wrote this specifically because otherwise it might not work quite as well. I wrote, if you can't answer, because this is known information, you must return 3 question marks. And I showed it exactly how those 3 question marks look like, because then you could go ahead and just look at all the ones that have 3 question marks here. This example is from a customer project that I've done, and this is information from a travel survey. So people who went traveling filled out a survey where they wrote their travel destinations. This was mostly in German, some of it is in English, but you can see how that looks like. And so what I can do here is I can take this first response and unleash AI to extract the countries from this text. And my prompt is exactly that, extract countries from this, and I give it the cell A2, and it will extract those countries. We'll drag this down again to the end. And so one by one, this will start extracting the countries from this first column. And you already see a couple of things that might irk us. So for example, we have different languages in this response. We have Indonesia, Indonesian, and German. We have countries that are separated by line, which might or might not be how we want it. Here we have it separated by a comma. So depending on what you want to do with this information, you want this to be formatted in a way that helps you down the road to work with it. So this is good, but it's not exactly the way we want it. So in this second sheet, what I did is I put together a fairly comprehensive prompt that tells the AI how to deal with this type of information. It gives it formatting information. I'm telling it to use this international standard, ISO 3166, which has an agreed upon set of country names in English. And I'm telling it to use this and no alternative names or alternative spellings or languages. I'm telling it how to deal with uncertainty. So if there is a region or a country that it cannot do anything, similar to the first example that we saw with the capitals, I'll tell it to mark it as unknown. I'm telling it to extract the countries with a comma, to not repeat the same country multiple times. And I'm giving it a couple examples how that looks in reality. For example, Latin America is not a country, so it should mark this as a problem with those 3 asterisks. And so this should give the AI enough information to work with to create a meaningful list of countries from this. What I'll have to do now, though, is to tell it to use that prompt. So instead of using this prompt right here that says extract countries from this, I will go and delete that and instead mark this cell. It's on this sheet too. And one thing I'll have to do here, though, is I will have to tell it to always use this particular cell, no matter where the AI function is used. And you might be familiar with this $ formatting. This just tells Google Sheets to always use this particular column A and this particular row 1. So always cell A1 for the prompt. I can hit enter. And so you see in this sort of purple background that it's doing something. I can generate an insert here. And now that cell is not in German anymore, but rather it says the names in a standardized way in English. So this looks pretty good. I will go and drag this all the way down to our last cell. And one by one, this should now extract the information in a much more standardized way that I can then use and process further. And it's interesting. So you already see a couple things here. It can't do anything with Asia or South America or North Africa. Those are not countries. So it marks it as unknown. You might want to revisit this. You can always refresh and insert if there's something that you are not happy with or something that stands out. But by and large, if I just look at all those, that looks pretty good. It's all in English. The countries seem to be spelled in a consistent way. Problems are marked accordingly. And so this should help you then go in, clean this up, and process it further any way you might want it. All right. Next example I have is for an e-commerce store. And let's say this is an e-commerce store for car parts. And so this might have a whole bunch of things that you might see on the website, little strings for the navigation, for some of the titles, maybe some functionality. And let's say that e-commerce store wants to sell their car parts to, let's say, people in Germany as well. So for this, what needs to happen is the language of the website has to change to German. And for this, we would have to translate all of those things into German. So what you can always do here again is you can say, hey, AI, translate this string into German. All right. And why am I saying this? Because some things like home would likely be translated to your physical home, which is not what you want for a website. So this gives it a bit of context that this is for a website, and it can pick the correct terms in each language because it knows what it's used for. And again, we have to provide it with the data to translate. I'll select this cell. It translates it into Startseite, which in German seems correct. It suggested autofill to do the same thing for all of the rows. We say, yes, let's do that. And what's happening is now, again, it goes one by one and it translates this information into German. So there's a bit over 100 strings here. With a bit of waiting, this does all of the translation right in the spreadsheet. So you don't have to go to ChatGPT or any other tool. You can stay right in your spreadsheet and use it down the road. Of course, if this has to be translated into more than just German, you could say, we want to see this in French. we will just copy this prompt and we will say, translate this string into French. And again, it asks us if it wants to do it with all of the rows. And of course, we want to do that. And pretty amazingly, it does it one by one. So this should help translating the website into different languages and localizing those so that people all around the world could look at the website and order car parts from this fictitious e-commerce store. All right, last example that I want to show you. Let's say this is a company that provides cleaning services and they receive a whole bunch of emails from their customers, from prospects, day in, day out, and they might want to see what kinds of emails are we actually getting, or is there a consistent theme? And so what we can do here is we can ask the AI to categorize the sentiment of those emails. So for example, we can say, classify the sentiment of this email for a cleaning service company. And again, we'll give it a range. Here we give it more than one cell because we have a subject and a body. So I drag it from A2 to B2. I will close this and it will start classifying it as positive. I will drag this down yet again. It does positive, negative, and neutral. If we want to make sure it always uses those three, again, we can say use only locations, positive, neutral, negative. And because it knows only those three are valid, if I recreate this, it knows, oh, out of those three, this text is actually more closely aligned with neutral because this is an email asking for availability. This is neither negative nor positive. And so because I give it a range of positive, neutral, negative, it can select the correct answer much, much better. We can refresh this always and see if it stays with this answer, and it absolutely does. So I'll drag this down again. And it comes back with, again, the sentiment neutral, negative, positive for each. That's pretty good. So now we might want to extract not the sentiment, but maybe the type of email that this is. So we can say type email, and this would be a prompt that looks like this. Classify this email into the following categories. I'll say complaint, quote, compliment, billing, question, and scheduling. Again, I'm selecting A2 to B2. And it will come back with the classification for each email. Let's talk about some of the limitations that you should be aware of. I think the most important thing is you can only have one AI function per sheet. So that means all the examples that I showed you all use the same AI function. As soon as you have multiple ones, that will not work anymore. In general, also, while you might get some results using prompts that mimic mathematical functions, don't use it for that, obviously. You have tons of existing functions and formulas with Google Sheets, so use it for text-only outputs. In general, when a prompt changes, when the input data changes, the result is not an auto refresh. So whenever something changes, you'll have to manually refresh, as we've seen before for some of the examples. And then also, Google Sheets can work with about 200 requests at a time. So if you have a longer batch of 1,000, 10,000 rows where you have to perform the same action, you might want to batch that into several chunks. So that really matters when you have a lot of data, but otherwise up to 200, you should be good. All right, we talked about a whole bunch of things. First and foremost, the AI function we saw you can use in Google Sheets, just like you would use in ChatGPT. But the benefit is really if you have more than one instance that you need to generate output for, you can do that right in the spreadsheet. No more copying and pasting things back and forth. You do it right in Google Sheets. 2, be aware of the context. So if you can give context and examples, do that right in the prompt. You can do that right in the prompt as a parameter. You can write out a longer prompt in a separate part of your spreadsheet, and then have a reference in the AI function that refers to that. And then in general, these were just 4 examples of things you can do. There's a whole bunch of more things you can do. The sky's really the limit. If you have things that you need to do the same repetitive prompt for, I think the AI function in Google Sheets will be your new best friend. If you use this for something else, I'd be super curious what that is. Leave a comment down below. And if you're an Excel user, I have a video for you that does the same thing for Excel that we just did for Google Sheets. And so that's it for me. See you soon.